This film contains scenes of violence and cruelty and is not recommended for children and persons with a weak or unstable psyche.
Октябрьская, взрыв по второму пути.
Я внизу, какая тут информация, какая надо? Есть скорая свободная.
Мам, почему ты не отвечаешь?
4 скорых, 4 пострадавших.
Мам, что ты не звонишь? Мамочка, перезвони, пожалуйста, мам.
Около 80 человек. У меня 2 пострадавших с ногами.
April the 11th, 2011, Oktyabrskaya metro station, 17:55. It's a rush hour in Minsk. The platform and the arriving trains are packed with people. At this moment, thousands of people are trapped in a narrow concrete sarcophagus of the transfer metro station. In 15 seconds, a terror attack will divide them into the living and the dead. All the law enforcement agencies of the country are looking for the terrorists. They're looking for them at railway stations, at airports and in public places. The investigators spend the whole night watching, frame by frame, the videos from all the surveillance cameras from all underground stations. Oktyabrskaya and Kupalovskaya stations are in the center of close attention. Towards morning, the following person draws everybody's attention. At 17:43, he leaves the carriage with a heavy bag and heads to Oktyabrskaya station. A minute after the blast, he leaves the metro empty-handed. This person is Dmitry Konovalov. Just 29 hours after the blast, he and his associate Vladislav Kovalyov are detained by the special unit Almaz. The blast that shook whole Belarus. The blast that claimed 15 lives. How the bloodiest crime in the newest history of Belarus was masterminded.
When did you push the button? When the train was coming?
The blast at Oktyabrskaya station, crime and punishment. Watch it right now. Vitebsk district DSK. That is the place where Dmitry Konovalov was born, where he grew up and went to school number 35. He was different from his peers in his pathological passion for chemistry and explosive devices.
We went there, we fooled around, carried out experiments, and blew things up.
This is the very school and the classroom where Konovalov studied. The register with his grades. Among mostly satisfactory and average marks, there is only one column with the highest marks. These 8s and 9s were given in chemistry.
He was really a natural-born chemist.
A passion for chemistry is not a crime. Year after year, the blasting practices, however, replaced Konovalov's family, friends, and humanity. Much later, during the investigation and at the trial, it becomes clear what monstrous contempt Konovalov has developed for others. Since school time, Konovalov drinks alcohol to compensate for his aloofness and bitterness.
I cannot drink without washing it down, but I will.
The regular guests at his parties will say later, Konovalov often speaks about suicide. During the trial, 10 witnesses, including his own mother, father and brother, give a detailed account of 3 suicide attempts.
After I had drunk a bottle of vodka, I took blades and, not completely realizing what was happening, I started to make, guess, 7-centimeter long cuts along one of the wrists, trying not to touch the tendons. Then I made cuts on the other arm. They formed a small puddle of blood. It was all happening in the basement. In short, it was done very spontaneously and very unskillfully. He was going to commit suicide afterwards. He showed me pills. Well, not really pills, capsules with some substance.
Vladislav Kovalyov himself has thought of suicide. Since the age of 17, he is registered with the local narcologist's office. After piecing together the facts from his biography and the interrogations of the terrorist, experts in psychology will make an unambiguous conclusion. He is not lying when he calls himself a horrible person.
He was well aware of it. He knew what he was doing.
After school, Konovalov enters a vocational technical school, but as he admits himself, studies quite reluctantly. In 2005, he gets expelled. Only a few days later, on the 14th and the 22nd September, 2 explosions thunder in Vitebsk, one after the other. The main clue for the investigators is uncommon strike elements. Here they are, the legs of the 7E alarm clock. All watchmakers in Vitebsk are checked. It might seem surprising, but the investigators come to Konovalov's home. His father is a watchmaker. The investigators are puzzled by 3 fateful factors. The watchmaker and his elder son are not involved. Nobody suspects the younger Konovalov, and the investigators do not go to the basement of the house. Later, it is the basement laboratory that is the key link between 4 explosions. The lacerated wounds of the injured contain traces of a rare solder. This solder is later to be found in the non-triggered bomb at the Stella Monument. Finally, the same solder is withdrawn from Konovalov's basement in 2011.
Tin lead antimony solder was used in both cases, a variety of firmware control system.
During the second interrogation, Konovalov gives a detailed account of how he blew up his own town.
2 explosive devices were made in the shape of a beer can.
Besides Konovalov, one more person knows about the preparation and the implementation of the attacks in Vitebsk. A friend of his, Vladislav Kovalyov. He knows about the attacks a month before, but keeps silence. He will continue to conceal his involvement for 6 years. The explosives, which he buys in 2005, give him away. After the Vitebsk blasts, Vladislav buries TNT in a wasteland, and a year later digs it out from the ground. It is this TNT which is later used for the bomb which will not go off in Minsk on Independence Day.
There is the ditch where I hid the explosive material.
The origin of the TNT is another offense which was disclosed by the investigators after the arrest of the terrorists. In 2001, a conscript, Maxim Zheludev, steals 3 TNT blocks from a military unit. 4 years later, he sells them to his friend, Yevgeny Kuksyonok.
I didn't feel like throwing it away, so I sold it to my friend Kovalyov.
A month before the blast, in Minsk, he gives the rest of the TNT to Konovalov. Only in August 2011, Maxim Zheludev is sentenced to 6 years of imprisonment for the theft of the TNT from the military unit. The intermediary, Yevgeny Kuksyonok, was not sentenced to imprisonment due to his young age. Impunity gives more strength to the demolition specialists. Their attacks become more and more cynical and impudent. In summer 2002, Konovalov and Kovalyov together blow up the windows in the children's library. Kiosks catch fire twice. One of them burns down to ashes. A van burns down in Kovalyov's yard. Blasts thunder in the entrances of apartment blocks and at Grishany railway station.
Could you tell us where we should go next? Over there you can see the house, which was rocked by a blast and whose entrance was set on fire.
During the face-to-face interrogation, Kovalyov, apparently fascinated, speaks about 2 episodes with tripwires and flammable mixture. Even Vitebsk police are unaware of one of them.
A man was riding his bicycle. There came a blast, and flammable liquid poured next to him.
The lucky cyclist was safe because he was traveling at a high speed.
The blast was similar to a shot fired from a tank gun. I started to recall Chechnya. So many guys died because of the tripwires.
The second episode with the tripwire also dates back to 2004. Near Grishany railway station, a 14-year-old Ivan Kalutsky got into the trap set up by Konovalov.
At the beginning there came petrol on my face, and then fire. I was all in flames, a living torch.
But for Kovalyov's confession, the episode with a person being burnt alive would still remain unexposed. Later on you will see deadly experiments. How do terrorists test their explosives? Why does Konovalov film himself on the video?
Fuck yeah!
And unknown details of the blast at the Stella Monument, Hero City, Minsk. Handling explosives, besides the theory of chemistry, requires perfect skills. Shortly after the arrest, it becomes clear how the terrorists practiced. The investigators find dozens of photos and videos of this practice on Konovalov's mobile phone. The ultimate task for the investigators is to find the firing fields. At the request of the Prosecutor General's office, the military officers join the search. Konovalov himself keeps silence. Not knowing about it, Kovalyov starts to speak. During one of the interrogations, he draws a detailed layout chart of the firing fields.
The place was discovered within an hour. The craters were up to half a meter or a meter deep. In the course of the examination, parts of nails and steel rods were found in some of the trees. The parts were used to fill the explosive devices.
Since summer 2007, the explosive power grows and each test is filmed on a camera. They will find the camera in Konovalov's apartment during the search. Here are these snapshots. In one of them, the terrorist strikes a pose. He enters the frame, checking whether the blast area is visible enough. And here comes the blast itself. Pay attention. One can hear Konovalov's voice. He is surprised and delighted with the power of the blast wave.
Fuck yeah!
The film footage confirms the desire of the terrorists to cripple their victims. To do so, they meticulously study and muster the spread zone of the fragments and strike elements in the firing fields. Konovalov hangs battle maps among the trees. Kovalyov is experimenting with bottles, placing them next to the epicenter of the explosion.
And what happened to the bottle? Nothing. It scattered into pieces.
During the coming terrorist attacks, the metal shrapnel does not penetrate paper and glass. It penetrates living people.
Dmitry told me about his desire to set off a blast in the city of Minsk about, a month before the blast itself.
At night, on July the 4th, 2008, a powerful explosion thunders at the Stella Monument, Hero City, Minsk.
I planted an explosive device opposite the Hotel Planeta.
Fatal contingency thwarts the plans. The first bomb does not go off. Konovalov waits for its detonation for half an hour. By the way, the forensic experts who examined the charge believe that it was extraordinary luck. as random passers-by find the bomb and pry it open.
After they saw wires and even a clock under the carton of juice, they realized it must have been an explosive device.
While curious Minsk dwellers are examining the unexploded charge, Konovalov coolly goes to the rented apartment to get the second one, returns to the event, plants the bomb and activates it.
Did you realize it that your actions could do damage to other people? Yes.
Thanks to the misfire, the investigators had one of the most important pieces of evidence in their hands, a non-exploded bomb. The first thing that became apparent during the examination, it is completely identical to the bomb which maimed 59 people at the Stella Monument.
They're practically identical. We managed to determine a fragment of the insulation tape taken from the unexploded device and a fragment of the insulation tape found after the blast. They used to be parts of a hull.
Another important conclusion was made during the examination. In terms of its power and the engagement range, the bomb was similar to the anti-tank mine, but it was made in makeshift conditions.
Here's what the pack of screw nuts looked like when it was in the unexploded explosive device. All the fingerprints, whatever they might say, were found inside. It would be a different thing if there was just one fingerprint, but there were several of them.
The expert's conclusion is unambiguous. 3 distinct fingerprints, these are the ring finger and the thumb of the left hand and the right thumb, belong to the executor. To solve the case, the investigators make an unprecedented and unpopular move. All males in the country are fingerprinted. Colleagues from other countries are engaged. The main burden falls on the largest international police network, Interpol.
On July the 5th, 2008, the fingerprints of a suspect were sent to all member states for a check. More than 30 states reported back the results of the fingerprint check. More than 20 states provided analysis of the IED.
The work the world's police and intelligence agencies did in 2008 was huge and was not wasted. After 3 years, it would not leave any ground for speculation. Blasts at the Oktyabrskaya metro station and on the Independence Day were the work of the same person.
All of the world had the chance to see it clearly, that the traces sent in 2008 and the prints that Konovalov now has match.
The well-known lawyer Alexei Benetsky, who practices in Russia, the UK and Germany, is sure. The Interpol data became the chief argument for its partners in Europe.
It is difficult to suspect Interpol of taking money to add someone's fingerprints to the files post factum. It's not possible.
In July 2008, when the doctors at hospitals are fighting for the lives of the injured people, Konovalov and Kovalyov are at large and watching the news. When it is clear that the blast is classified as disorderly conduct, they become enraged. He takes this wording as an insult.
He did not agree that it was disorderly conduct. He even read me the criminal code, the terrorism article. He thought it was a terrorist attack. He came to Minsk on several occasions. That's not his testimony alone. This is his mobile phone's billing information that clearly indicates he spent 1 or 2 days in Minsk, several times. Question: what were you doing? I was looking for sites for the upcoming attack. He wanted to be a #1 terrorist.
For 3 years, Konovalov narrowly escaped fingerprinting. In January 2009, something altogether incredible happens. Konovalov was drafted into the army, in which case all recruits are fingerprinted, but the terrorists said at the military registration and enlistment office, "I have already done that," and they believed him. In the language of justice, Konovalov's luck is negligence. This is the charge that put the expert who did not check on the terrorist wards in prison.
He was convicted by Vitebsk Regional Court to 3 years in prison.
In the army, Konovalov matured into a full-blown terrorist. A month after his return, he said to Kovalyov in summer, "I'll blow up Minsk metro."
At the meeting, he said he left the military unit premises with 2 fire extinguishers, which he wanted to use in making an explosive device.
These are the extinguishers that the terrorist is going to use for new mines. They will be found in the basement laboratory.
Here they are, empty, not charged. That is, Konovalov emptied them so he could use them as a bomb.
The numbers of the fire extinguishers will help the investigators trace them back to the barracks where Konovalov did his military training.
That's where they were located, fire extinguisher 1 and 2.
Coming up next, 24 hours before the terrorist attack, how does Konovalov deliver the explosive to Minsk?
I knew what was in the bag.
Who helps him in the capital? And why target the Oktyabrskaya metro platform?
There is a lot of people there.
Candid confessions by #1 terrorist at the crime scene. In the morning of April the 4th, 2011, Konovalov receives a summons from the local police department. He is asked to show up for fingerprinting. At this point, the terrorist knows he is doomed. In the morning of April the 9th, operative officers make an unexpected visit to Konovalov's place, having waited for Konovalov in vain.
We asked him to be fingerprinted, but he refused right away.
The operative team insists, and Konovalov lets them have him fingerprinted. The circle is closed, the terrorist understands. It's hours before he is captured.
He panicked, called me, and decided to come to Minsk.
The plan to carry out the attack in summer 2011 falls apart. It takes a lot of time to assemble bombs using the stolen fire extinguishers in maximum charge. Konovalov has no time. However, the place of the attack cannot be changed. Konovalov goes down to the basement laboratory and assembles a bomb in a few hours. The following moves by the terrorists are restored by the minute. At noon, without coming back home, Konovalov rents an apartment in Vitebsk for a day.
When he entered, he gently put down a black bag in the hallway on the right side.
Early in the morning of April the 10th, Konovalov calls a taxi to the rented apartment. He goes to the railway station and then to Minsk. In 4 minutes he spends in the car, Konovalov will not utter a word. So the main thing the driver remembers is that very bag.
I put the bag in the trunk myself. It weighed no less than 20 kilograms.
6:01, Vitebsk railway station. Here Konovalov is first recorded by a CCTV camera. There he is with a bag in the waiting room. After a couple of minutes he walks up to the platform. He gets on the train. A few hours later Konovalov is in Minsk. There he meets his old friend, Vladislav Kovalyov. Pay attention. There they move up the escalator, holding that same bag by the handles. The important fact, Kovalyov already knows what the bag has inside. It is a bomb.
Explosive? Bomb? How did you know? When I picked it up, well, I hoisted it rashly. Well, he said that I shouldn't do that and explained what there was in the bag.
Ковалев был зафиксирован в метрополитене камерами наблюдения.
Kovalyov was recorded by the metro surveillance cameras when he, together with Konovalov, was carrying a large travel bag. And it was proven that was him.
Here at the station, Konovalov and Kovalyov find a rental apartment over the phone. Konovalov calls the agency from his associate's mobile.
Он опасался, что отпечатки пальцев.
He feared that the fingerprints they had taken would be checked against the database to find out he had carried out the blast in Minsk at the Stella Monument. So that's why he turned off his phone.
A couple of hours later, both are in the rented apartment. They spend the evening together, but not alone. Two girls have come. One of them, Yana Pochitskaya, has stayed in the apartment for 2 days. Later, she will be the main witness for the prosecution.
We got in touch on the Vkontakte website, and he wrote something like that he would come to Minsk for 3 days, and we could date if I would want to. I agreed, took a girl with me, and I think at 8 o'clock, 8:15, I was at the Frunzinskaya metro station, and there he was, with Vlad.
On April the 10th, the cameras recorded Konovalov at the Oktyabrskaya station. This is the final target and location selection.
April 10 video clearly shows how Konovalov does the so-called recon and meticulously reviews his route and the place he would plant the explosive device, and selects the place where he should set it off. This is exactly the place of the would-be blast in Minsk metro.
The company spends the night boozing up.
When we came, they had already had 3 bottles of vodka, and Dima was not so sober.
In the morning of the 11th, Kovalev goes to work and only comes back by dinner time. The company starts drinking, but Konovalov says, "I won't drink much, I have an important meeting." Later, Yana will show on the location where the terrorists hid the bombs, where they connected the wires of the explosive, and how they acted just 1 hour before the blast.
I opened the curtain on this side here and saw that they were doing something inside the bag.
Konovalov and Kovalev spend 15 minutes behind the curtain.
There Kovalov helps Konovalov bring this explosive to readiness. Do not forget that Kovalov is an electrician, an expert in this, and it was necessary to wire it up. And you know, when Kovalov was testifying, he gave so many details and nuances of this electric circuit. Well, a mere outside observer could not say that.
Он вытащил, достал этот передатчик, сказал, что
He pulled out the transmitter, well, and said, "This is to set off the bomb." He pressed a couple of times. I also held it in my hands. And that's it, and gave it back to him.
Konovalov returns to the apartment without the bag and in high spirits. This is shocking, but the man who has just committed a terrorist attack is singing.
In the kitchen, he was singing something trashy.
At this point, television companies break the news. Yana watches the footage on TV, and while she was drunk, she remembers. Konovalov and Kovalev are laughing.
They were laughing their heads off.
This led them to feel enraptured. We did that. We wanted that.
Laughter in the terrorists' apartment coincides with the rescue workers retrieving the dead bodies from the metro.
That Kovalov is an accomplice is beyond any doubt. The person who essentially approved all of Konovalov's actions for 10 years, discussed with him. And if you take the attack, the specific things he did pointed to his complicity. He assisted. He helped to set off the bomb. He wished him luck. He asked him how it went. Together, they had a drinking bout in the apartment.
The company keeps drinking throughout the following day and watching the news broadcasts. By the evening, they run out of alcohol, and Konovalov, the first time after the attack, leaves the apartment. He goes to the store.
What did you do on Tuesday?
On Tuesday we went to the store.
What did you buy?
Wine.
That's when the terrorist is spotted. Food surveillance follows him to the apartment. A few hours later, a special unit Almaz takes it by storm. Coming up next, terrorist attack that shook the country. The last seconds before the blast.
I arrived at the Oktyabrskaya metro station.
How did they figure out and capture the most wanted murderer in the country? For the first time on the screen, video showing how Konovalov was captured, an interrogation of Konovalov right on the station platform, where he killed 15 people. Monday, 1739. Konovalov walks down to the Frunzinskaya metro station. Here he is with a bag, passing the turnstile and walking down onto the platform. Pay attention, a police guard sees him, but he does not even try to stop the terrorist. They will find out who the police guard is. This is Vitaly Rogachevsky. His indifference will form the basis of a separate criminal case. On February the 1st, 2012, Vitaly Rogachevsky will be sentenced to 3 years in prison. Here the terrorist comes down onto the platform and gets into the first carriage of the train that has just come. Here he also follows a woman in a white hat, and several minutes later he gets off at the Kopalovskaya station. Moments later, Konovalov is at the destination.
I came here, put the bag here, at this place. There was a bench here. I sat on it for something like 3 minutes, turned around, and walked upstairs.
1754. Konovalov is again in the tunnel, but without the bag. He watches it closely, turning back several times as he walks. At the entrance to the tunnel, the terrorist stops. It is no accident, but a concern for safety. Approximately for a minute, Konovalov closely watches the bomb and the platform.
When did you press this button? When the train was approaching. There was a violent blast.
There was no air to breathe.
In the midst of it, people are literally torn apart by the force of the explosion. Chunks of granite and metal shrapnel of the bomb punch even the steel casing of the carriage.
A boy was killed in front of me. He was running to the train. There was already a lot of people, without arms, without legs. People were moving, asking for help. I fell over when then I understood with my hands there was something sticky and hot, you know, and something like that. Well, these were the remains of other victims.
Some dozens of minutes passed after the blast when collecting of evidence started at the Oktyabrskaya station. It is the best practices of the special services from different countries of the world. Terrorists are easy to catch at once, or you will never catch them. By the way, alongside with the special forces of the Republic of Belarus, the ones from Interpol, the Mossad from Israel, the FSB and the Investigation Committee of the Russian Federation joined the investigation procedures.
The device was put in at the metro station, and it came into action when the train was arriving. It happened at the moment when people were getting on and off. The blast was so destructive that the body of one of the casualties was thrown to the next line with a blast wave and got under the train going in the opposite direction.
The analysis of the screenshots from the metro and street video cams was started, and it takes just 4 hours for the investigation team to point out the main suspect, the one who enters the metro with a bag and leaves it without it. In the morning on the 12th of April, the operative group does not know the name of Konovalov, but they have a super picture taken in Oktyabrskaya Square. It is here where the terrorist comes back so as to see the consequences of the blast by himself. What a picture! The colleagues from the Interpol helped improve it up to the quality of a portrait.
By the evening of the 12th of April, the quality of these pictures was improved, and we received them and used them in operational criminal search actions.
At the same time, the investigation team works through possible associates of the terrorist. There is a version that he could not act by himself in the metro. Everyone who stopped or went beside, gave a look, or was in the visibility zone is identified and checked right down to polygraph test.
There was nobody on the videotape who could be at least indirectly associated with this grave crime. All people on the video were absolutely casual people.
While Konovalov, Kovalyov and Pochitska are wrapped in drinking, operating officers narrow the search area ultimately. They again process the screenshots from surveillance cameras. On April the 10th and 11th, the terrorist entered the metro twice at the Frunzenskaya station. Moreover, he entered from the side with no public transport stops. It might mean that he came to the metro on foot. The search area includes Sukhaya Street, Romanovskaya Sloboda, Collectornay Street and Nemiga. It is a small neighborhood with few residential buildings.
Every person who was more or less suspicious was paid special attention to.
On that day, for the first time since 2005, luck turned to the investigators. On April the 12th, in the evening, they spotted Konovalov near the store. Then the Almaz unit acted dartingly, rigidly and accurately.
The terrorists are detained. It's quite common in the world, practice. It was done unexpectedly and fast, because we all worried about the dwellers of the block of flats and we thought there could have been one more explosive device in their apartment. As to avoid any counterstand, the police used physical force when the criminals were detained.
Attention! When detained, Konovalov's face was beaten and these were the only injuries of the terrorists. Then investigators and detectives changed a dozen times. Kilometers of videotape recording interrogations and experiments would be used. All interrogation and experiments were held with participation of lawyers, witnesses, experts and physicians. And none of the participants of the investigation, including the terrorists, would mention violence or pressure.
Vladislav Yurovich, have you watched this video? Yes, there are no notes. What about your notes on the procedure of the investigation? None.
The video made within the first minutes after storming the apartment will also be quite demonstrative. Just compare. Extremely drunk terrorists on the one hand and their casualties on the hospital operating tables on the other hand.
What is your last name, first name and patronymic name? Fuck, look at the video camera. Last name, first name and patronymic name. Last name, first name and patronymic name. Well, your friend, what's his last name? Well, Dima? What? His name is Dima? And his last name? I don't remember. What's Dima's last name? So recollect it. They're drunk, they're very drunk. Konovalov. Konovalov Dima. Konovalov Dima. Konovalov Dima. What's your name? Ivan? Ivan? Last name? Kovalyov. Ivan Kovalyov? Vlad Kovalyov. Vlad Kovalyov.
Due to serious hangover, the first interrogation of the terrorist had to be postponed for several hours. And only on April the 13th, in the morning, Konovalov would testify with his lawyer present.
I came to the metro station Oktyabrskaya and exploded a bomb.
Watch next. What did the comprehensive expertise of Russia's FSB reveal?
There are traces of Levin.
Families of the killed one a year later.
It seems to me that I always feel him somewhere beside.
And which verdict did the relatives and close people of the casualties of this terrorist attack adjudge to Kovalyov and Konovalov?
We have been waiting for this decision. We really hoped for it.
Slaughter is not enough to Konovalov. He needs suffering of people.
Did you have a purpose to kill as many people as possible? Yes, I did.
In 2011, the basement used as a laboratory was finally found. The sign over the door says, "Lacrimosa is a masochist's dream."
Which explosive materials were produced here? Diper acid of acetone. What does it consist of? Of hydroperoxide, acetone, and sulfuric acid.
The detectives will really find afterwards a genuine arsenal of terrorists in that laboratory basement.
The technical acetone manufactured in this laboratory is identical to the bulb fuse found in a box of juice Sadachok when the blasts took place in Minsk. It is absolutely the same, absolutely identical.
The hazardous findings in the laboratory, as well as dozens of expert reviews, will prove that the items from the basement and the bombs used in Vitebsk near the Stella Monument, Hero City Minsk, and in the metro have the same origin. For example, this is a handmade fuse from the basement which was found in 2011, and this is a detonating fuse of the bomb that failed on the Independence Day in 2008. You can compare them by yourselves, they are the same. While expert reviews are carried out, Konovalov tells the investigation team and shows how he was preparing for the terrorist attacks.
The investigation experiment with Konovalov was carried out with their officers present, and he was offered to create the models of explosive devices, and he acted quite masterfully. And some of his actions were half-automatic.
During one of the experiments, it takes him a mere half an hour to manufacture the imitator of an explosive material and an explosive device.
The experiment, which was carried out, if I'm not mistaken, by the Israeli experts, was as follows. Konovalov, with his eyes closed, assembled the bomb, which he blasted in the metro. I have no doubt that they are the people that committed a terrorist attack in Minsk metro on the 11th of April. What else did you use in the explosive device? Submunitions? These very submunitions were taken from the site of crime, right after the blast. You can see on these submunitions cut pieces of fittings, bolts, nuts, metal rods, bolts, and nails, which Konovalov bought at a store specially as to fill the explosive. And we can see some traces of scorch and remains after the blast.
And here is the carriage near which the bomb left by Konovalov blasted. Officers from the Federal Security Service, FSB, were involved in its examination. This document is a summary of the comprehensive expertise issued by the Institute of Criminology under the auspices of the FSB. Its 17 pages contain the detailed analysis of the bomb, and it is found that it was handmade.
All the components of this explosive device can be found in stores. There are no problems in making such an explosive device at home.
Dmitry Konovalov is a lathe operator, miller. He has worked at the Tractor Spare Parts enterprise since June 2007.
There are traces of lathing on the goods in the form of cylinder rolls, made with tools such as Spartanov tool and probably a straight turning tool with the equipment of the lathing machine type. During the search at his apartment, cutouts of metal fittings were found, and they were similar to the ones used for the blast.
In May 2011, the Interpol Secretary General Ronald Noble arrives in Minsk as to personally assess the counter-terrorist operation.
I can tell all the citizens of Belarus that this case was solved so quickly because of the high professionalism of the police and officials in the Ministry of Internal Affairs and other ministries, because of the technology and the CCTVs that you have in place, and because of the strong relations the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Interpol Minsk have with countries on a bilateral basis and a multilateral basis.
At the first court proceeding, Konovalov confessed that he committed a range of terrorist attacks which lasted for 6 years. The price paid is 15 killed people and nearly 500 injured people.
I admit my guilt of the blast of Minsk metro on April 2011, as well as I admit my guilt of the blast on the Independence Day on the 3rd of July 2008.
This evil must be punished. This is Vladimir Dobrenkov's opinion, the expert sociologist of Russia and the father who lost his daughter. In 2001, Maria and her bridegroom were severely killed by a gang of killers.
Any person, after committing such a grave crime, puts himself out of society and out of law. Actually, he is a dropout because he doesn't want to live according to human laws.
The court finds Kovalyov guilty of having failed to report about terrorist attacks in Vitebsk and Minsk in 2008, and his role in the most destructive case, in the terrorist attack in the metro, was qualified as of an associate.
Why didn't you do anything to stop Dmitry Konovalov? I don't know. They say that Kovalyov was sentenced to capital punishment for failure to inform about the crime. It is not the matter that he failed to inform the police. He is a participant of this crime. He is an accomplice. He is an associate. And the properties of his associate's role are evident. And that's why it is quite lawful that he was charged with terrorism.
The Supreme Court will consider alcohol intoxication of the convicts as an aggravating circumstance. The verdict is the exceptional measure of punishment. It is death penalty.
The verdict is fair. It's absolutely just. They deserve this. Such people should not live on our earth. Punishment in the way of death penalty is appropriate. You see, it is a recompense, and it is a just vengeance. If other people were deprived of their lives, the people who thoughtlessly do such evil must be punished.
The relatives and close people of the people killed as a result of the terrorist attack provide their own verdict.
It seems to me that I always feel him somewhere beside. Probably he looks at me from upside. And I can't delete his SMS messages. Probably I will never do it.
Roman is still waited for by his younger sister Alyonka, because he left on April the 11th just for some little time and he promised to come back. And Roman never lied to his little sister.
Goodbye, my son.
He would have been 19 this year.
Sergei did not live only 3 months to see his birthday.
And that is all. This photo, and some more photos, we made lots of them. They do not look like, they do not seem as they repented, were sorry about what they did.
The ex-wife of the killed Vitaly Daineko also could not see repentance in the eyes of the terrorists, though she was waiting for it. But instead of human emotions, she saw only inhuman cynicism.
I did not doubt that they were guilty of this tragedy, that they did it. I had a feeling that they did not have any relatives if they decided to commit this crime. And of course, I wanted them to be punished adequately. We waited. We're waiting for this decision. Really waited.
Physicians did their best to save Anna Viktorovna's life a year ago right in the street. The relatives saw their blood-stained mother and granny near the metro exit when they watched TV. They saw her alive. Last time.
Last week we looked in her bedside table, took a portrait from it and just kissed her picture.